If you've ever had cannabis before sex, you'll know that it affects the experience and changes our perception of pleasure and sexual satisfaction. It might be also affecting the intensity of your orgasms, but in what way will depend on how much pot you consumed, of what kind, and how your body reacts to it. So while there are still many unknowns about weed and sex, what do we actually know? My name is Helena Nista and I make videos that help you have the best sex of your life. And today we're discussing how consuming cannabis affects our sex lives. So there has been a number of studies done over the last number of years about weed and sex, which indicates that we as humans have been curious about the impact of cannabis on our bodies and our pleasure experiences. But unfortunately, these studies haven't exactly given us all the answers we've been looking for, because the results have been, for the most part, quite inconclusive. This is most likely due to the nature of those studies being questionnaires or self-reported answers. And what we know about this kind of studies is that people might be lying in their answers, or at least they might be stretching the truth in some cases, or they might be simply not remembering their experiences correctly, and so reporting on them or self-reporting on them won't be the most accurate in every case. The other reason for these kind of inconclusive results is that we are all different, and many different things will affect the quality of our sexual experience after consuming cannabis. So it's not likely that we'll be always able to distill and identify exactly in what ways weed change the functioning of our bodies. But because these studies and these questionnaires have covered over a number of years now many thousands of individuals, that is giving us a solid basis to understand certain things, or at least to strongly assume certain things about the impact of weed on our bodies. And many people have been wondering whether cannabis could be potentially the answer to treating issues with female low libido. Because since Viagra proved so helpful and beneficial for many different men with their problems with getting hard, there has been this kind of pursuit for a pill or for a treatment that could help women as well with their arousal or desire or libido problems. And while the research and the data has been inconclusive, as I mentioned, the anecdotal evidence suggests that users of cannabis experience increased libido and more satisfaction during sex. A lot of people have reported that using cannabis really increases the sensitivity of the body. So it heightens our senses and our ability to perceive and feel pleasure, bliss, and sexual satisfaction in our bodies. But weed also does something else which is quite significant here. It lowers our inhibitions, which can make a huge difference if you are, or if your partner is experiencing shame or guilt or any kind of emotional or mental discomfort about being a sexual human being, an erotic human being. And it also relaxes us, allowing us to let go of the kind of stress, anxiety, or even pain in the body that would get in the way of our arousal. So when people get stoned, they typically experience themselves as sort of lost in the present moment, where there's no past, no future, there's just this moment itself and all the sensations and all the pleasure that the body is experiencing in this moment, without the impact of worries about the future or stress about the past that could have potentially this kind of inhibiting effect on the pleasure that we're feeling. So as reported by many people, our perception of pleasure and sexual bliss definitely increases on weed. So if you were to consume cannabis before having sex, the kind of results or the kind of benefits that you could expect from it for your sexual experience would be increased sex drive, better orgasms, less pain in the body if you might potentially be experiencing pain during intercourse, and increased sense of or perception of satisfaction from that sexual experience. So yes, it definitely seems like cannabis could be an answer to low female libido and to issues with sexual desire or sexual drive. But having said all of that, a small percentage of people also report that while weed provides certain benefits to their sexual experience, it also makes other aspects of sex worse. And there's also a group of people that reports that basically sex is worse on weed. So the conclusion here is that cannabis affects us all differently, and you basically need to figure out what works for you and if cannabis could be something that is helpful to you individually. Okay, let's talk about men and weed. How does cannabis affect male sexual performance, libido, pleasure, etc. So similarly to women, some men report a lot better experience and better performance, so better ability to get hard and lust and basically overall have more pleasure and better sexual satisfaction. However, other men reported quite the opposite, a worse experience in terms of perceived pleasure, but also worse performance. So that means lower libido, erectile issues, so difficulties with getting hard or sufficiently hard for sex, premature ejaculation, so ejaculating sooner than the man would ideally want, or even delayed ejaculation, so issues with actually reaching that orgasm at all. So here it also seems that weed just affects different men differently, and you might need to do your own research on your own body if you want to see if weed could be beneficial to you as a man in your perceived experience of pleasure and sexual satisfaction during sex, and if it affects your performance, your ability as a lover in a positive way. However, when it comes to men, there's another thing that really needs to be taken into consideration here when considering whether cannabis is good for you or beneficial for you, and that is male fertility. Because when research was conducted specifically on the quality of semen in cannabis users, we got a lot more conclusive answers. And so what we know is that cannabis does affect sperm quality. So it definitely affects sperm count and concentration. It also affects or creates abnormalities in sperm and affects its motility and viability, which are all very important when it comes to sperm making that journey all the way to the woman's egg and then being able to fertilize it. So this is something very important to take into consideration if you are considering becoming a father sometime in the future, because you don't want weed to basically ruin your chances of becoming a father or making that journey more difficult than it needs to be. And this is also something that clinicians and medical practitioners need to take into account if they are considering prescribing medical marijuana to men of reproductive age. It's always important to ask that question: is the gentleman in question planning or hoping to become a father? And so in that case, maybe an alternative treatment would be better. Finally, when it comes to the levels of testosterone and how they could be affected by consumption of cannabis, we are not sure, because yet again, the results of the studies are not conclusive and are not giving us any solid answers as yet. So what should you do and how should you proceed if you are interested in experimenting maybe with cannabis and seeing if it can have those positive results for your sex life? So first of all, check the laws about cannabis in the place where you live. It is quite important to be aware whether cannabis is legal in your state or in your country. And once you know that it is, you should start with a really small dose and then increase it only slowly while monitoring the results. And the reason for that is that most people reported that actually a small dose had the most beneficial effect on their sexual performance and experience, both when it comes to the quality of arousal and libido and the sex drive, and also that perceived sense of pleasure and sexual satisfaction that they achieve from that sexual experience. What has also been repeatedly reported by different people is that adding more or taking a larger dose of weed will not necessarily improve the results, and actually in most cases it makes the results worse, or at best doesn't make any difference whatsoever to the performance and experience. So if you do manage to find a dose that works well and that brings you more satisfaction, more pleasure, better performance, better libido, etc., stick with that dose and don't necessarily try to increase it in order to pursue better results, because most likely things will not get better with more weed. The quality of our sexual performance and the sexual experience and sexual satisfaction is a fairly complex matter because of the variety of different things happening in the body that will be impacting and influencing on both performance and pleasure. So that is what makes it so tricky and difficult to really assess with full certainty what kind of effect weed is actually having on your body and your performance. What adds to the difficulty here is that consuming weed will typically impair your judgment and your cognitive function, meaning that it's best to decide what you want to happen before you take cannabis, before you start consuming weed, because after that your judgment might be quite twisted and good judgment might go out the window. So make sure to decide beforehand how much you're going to consume, how much you're going to take, and what will happen once the weed is in your system, sexually speaking. And if you are fairly worried of taking weed and exploring sexually with another person, it might be a good idea to actually have an experience with weed all by yourself first, just when you're alone, and you can see how that combination of weed and sexual arousal is working for you in your body and what kind of results you're getting, how you're feeling about the whole thing, how everything works performance-wise, etc. And if you're curious about other practices that might make your sexual experiences a bit more magical, then consider signing up for my online course, Manifesting with Sex Magic. Sex Magic is a truly wonderful and amazing practice that combines the power of expanded orgasmic experiences and orgasmic energy with the power of your intention in order to manifest and create in your life anything that you desire. So if you're new to this topic and if you would like to find out more, you will find the link to the program in the description bar below.